Welcome to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network with your hostess, Jen Josie. Join like-minded real estate investors and accelerate your business towards greatness. You will hear step-by-step strategies for success, interviews with real estate rock stars, and we will dig deep into past projects where we bear it all, including the good, the bad, and some just plain ugly. So get excited. Here's the bestower of badassery herself, the real Jen Josie. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Jen Josie, creator of RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Whoop, whoop. On today's episode, we have a special guest that will be sharing one of their past projects. We will let you decide if it was good or bad or just plain ugly. But before we begin, here's today's badassery bestowment, my little badass gift to you. So not too long ago, I was suffering from a horrible case of writer's block for my monthly blog. I ended up making a post on social media asking friends if they had any questions for me about my business. A question that kept coming up was, how did you fund your first deal? So here it is. There's nothing glamorous about our first deal except the house itself. We found our first project, and I use that term lightly, on Craigslist. The house was in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, which is just over an hour from our home in Raleigh. It was built in 1920. It was 4,200 square feet. It had 6 bedrooms and 2 baths and had these gorgeous fireplaces in each of the bedrooms. It was a gorgeous home with a lot of the original charm. But unfortunately, over the years, the area had suffered from some economic downturns and the home values dropped. We ended up buying it for $44,000. Yep, you heard that right, $44,000. We had never done a deal, so we were too afraid to ask anyone for funding. We ended up purchasing it through a self-directed IRA. You should always seek professional advice when it comes to IRAs, but for us, we could borrow half of our total balance, but no more than $50K a year. So when you borrow from your own self-directed IRA, you have to pay yourself interest. So basically, all we did was grow our own retirement account. We can't touch that money until we retire. So once we purchased the home, we found it was very difficult to find licensed and insured contractors in that area. The contractors in Raleigh were too busy to drive over an hour to do any of the work. So we did a few minor repairs ourselves. We paid a neighbor to clean up the lawn for $30, and then we simply listed it on the MLS. We were able to sell it as is for $67,000 6 months later. Not too bad for a first project. So now on to today's episode of the Real Estate Investor Growth Network podcast. I know I've said this a few times in the most recent podcast, but I went to this amazing mastermind in the Dominican Republic, and we have an actual Dominican on our show today. So welcome, Erick Martinez.
Oh my God. Thank you.
And
I've never had somebody.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but he's wearing a hat from the Charlotte Hornets. So he's representing North Carolina for me. So I'm super proud. So go ahead. I cut you off before.
No, I'm about to say, I've never had anybody introduce me in that way. So I was pretty excited.
I met you in the Dominican, and you are Dominican. So
yes.
So going back to being Dominican, give us a little background about you.
Background, I'd say being Dominican, first off, something I wouldn't change for the world. I don't care what ethnicity I could become or any race or anything like that. I love being Dominican. I love my roots. I love my culture. And I think a huge part of who I am and my drive comes from that. So I'm very grateful and just passionate about who I am.
So were you born there? I know you lived there briefly.
Yes, I wasn't born there. My parents came into the United States. My mom got here when she was 10 years old and had me at 16. So I was actually born in Brooklyn, New York, which most Dominicans, if you know, they're either born in New York or Florida,
yep,
or some hot tropical area because, you know, besides New York, obviously. But I was born there, and then at a very young age, my mom sent me to Dominican Republic because my dad ended up going back there. Not, you know, we got deported, but she sent me over there, and I actually lived with him for about 6 or 7 months. So not a long time as far as like years and stuff, but long enough to where I got to really understand what it was like to live in a third world country. And it obviously opened my eyes. It gave me a different appreciation for where I was born and just being in the United States overall.
So I met you because you accidentally, I'm sure, picked to sit next to the old folks in the meeting. So you sat next to Vance and I, and I say old folks, but how old are you?
I am 24, going on 25 in April.
24. And, I felt like one of the oldest people at this event, but there's full of young guns that are just starting to kick ass in the real estate industry. And I was so impressed with you because you are an engineer. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm a full-time engineer. I actually do a lot, man. I'm a full-time engineer. I flip sneakers. I'm a boxer.
Wait, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You flip sneakers?
Yeah, I sell shoes. If anybody doesn't know, the sneaker industry right now is a huge, huge industry. So there's a lot of people that will buy shoes, and once they sell out, the price goes up because the demand is still there and the supply is lower than demand, obviously. So I got into sneaker reselling, and that's been a good avenue of just some little side income for me.
That's something us old folk know nothing about. So very impressive. Yeah. I did just get a new pair of Kate Spade sneakers in the mail. So I do.
Congratulations.
I love me some Kate Spade shoes, but continue. Sorry. So flipping sneakers. And then what else were you saying?
Full-time engineer, boxer, and then, trying to make real estate my full-time gig eventually, but part-time real estate.
That's awesome. And I was talking to you because I lucked out. I wouldn't say we, but I lucked out because I got to ride with you from the hotel to the airport at the end and got to know you very well. And you were just like a sponge, just asking this crazy white old lady, sitting in the car with you and just asking me a ton of questions. And I was like, man, Erick is going somewhere. He is on this shit. I love it. So you were talking about a project, your very first project. So you've been involved in real estate for how long?
If we're going off the time that I officially bought my first project, coming up in March will be a year.
Okay. So within a year, you've had your first project. You have a second project almost completed, correct?
Yes.
And then you also have a rental you're working on right now?
Yep. I got a rental that I actually closed on 2 days after landing back from the Dominican Republic. So that was exciting. And obviously just trying to keep that momentum going. But yep. So far going into March, I have 3 complete projects under my belt as far as real estate goes.
That's awesome. So today we're talking specifically about your first project. So give us a little description. How many bedrooms? What year was it built? Let's talk about this property.
All right. So yeah, this property was in the North Linden area of Columbus. If anybody knows Columbus, Ohio, that's where I'm currently located. But it's a 3-bedroom. And of course, one of my alarms is going off. Okay. So 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot, or at least that's what we thought originally, which is always a good thing. It was built in 1940s. And I mean, that's pretty much it. It's a really basic house, has an attached garage to it. The garage is very different because normally with an attached garage, you have a 1-2 car garage widthwise, but it was about a 2-car garage lengthwise. You can get a car in and then park another car behind that car in the garage, which I'm not sure what anybody would ever build a garage that way, but it worked out for us.
Wow.
Had his driveway and everything in a quiet area of Linden. But yeah, it was a great property. I think it was a perfect special first property for me. Good.
And how'd you find the property?
I found this property actually through Austin Rutherford, which was as everybody knows, the 7-figure real estate investor that was hosting the mastermind.
Shout out to Austin. We love Austin. He's the one who put together the Elevate Mastermind that we attended in Dominican Republic, which is where we met. So he was wholesaling this property?
Yeah, so it's funny because he was wholesaling the property, but throughout the time that I ended up getting this property, I had no contact with him at all. Like, I didn't even know till after I had met him later on that the property came from him. But he was the originator of where the property came from. And, that's how I got it. I partnered with somebody who knew Austin directly. And then we actually ended up getting the property from the buyer directly. and I compensated Austin. And then, that's just how I got my first property.
Wonderful. And what was the asking price?
Uh,
Was it
the
different from
asking,
what you purchased it for?
no, we ended up purchasing it for $45,000.
Wonderful. That's like my property in Rocky Mount. And look, I digress for a second here because you're wearing the Charlotte Hornets basketball hat here. So when I first started learning in real estate, a huge thing that my coach kept telling me was everything's negotiable. Everything's negotiable. So the guy wanted, I think,
Yep.
like 52,000 for this property in Rocky Mount, and I kept hearing this buzz in my head saying everything's negotiable. So I said, "Is that price negotiable?" And he said, "Oh, I might be able to." And the only number that came to my brain was my high school basketball number, which was 44. So I said, "How about 44,000?" So we're right about the
Oh,
same
wow.
price for our first property here. So that's pretty interesting. So what was the estimated ARV at the time of purchase?
At the time, we were looking at about 120,000.
Okay, and what
Um,
go ahead. I'm sorry, 120,000.
oh, yeah, I was gonna get ahead of you. Go ahead.
So,
I'm gonna let you lead me.
so what were the estimated repairs at the time?
Estimated repairs was about 30 grand. And just, my little advice with that, when I go to do budget numbers, I always try to round up. So that was our estimated repairs. We didn't just think we were going to spend that much, but it's always best just to round up just in case. You always run into things behind those walls that you don't see coming. So
That is true. Do you ever add a contingency?
yes, I tend to do about a 10 to 15% contingency, depending on, if what I see, what I deem worthy in the property.
Yep, very good. Super smart. And what was your projected timeline to complete this project?
We projected about 2 months just to be safe, but we got a really bomb GC who rocked it out in about a month's time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who was your GC? I'm just curious. Is it the person who was there?
Well, it's funny because the GC we use is actually out of business now.
Oh,
So, bomb GC, but that was a problem. I think this is one of his, my flip was one of his first real, I guess, grinds and getting involved with real estate investors as far as GC goes.
hmm
So after that project, he started tackling a lot of different projects and didn't have an assistant or stuff to keep him organized. So he started biting off a little more than he could chew. And as far as I know now, he's not in the business anymore. But luckily, my project was the first one, and he actually got mine wrapped up and taken care of before any of that mess happened afterwards.
well, thank goodness for that. And GCs are so tough to find. So
Good ones, yes.
you are exactly good
Yeah.
GCs are tough to find. So you are
Yeah.
very lucky that took place. So, how did you finance this deal?
So I actually used hard money for this deal, which to me, from what I had learned, was very important because building those relationships, obviously in the long run, were going to be best. But I financed to a hard money lender called Lima One Capital.
hmm
But that was the easiest way for me to do it because obviously at the time with no experience, and not saying this isn't possible for anybody else, but just in my situation with no experience, it was hard for me to try to find a private money lender that was going to lend me all the money to do this.
So Lima One typically does a portion of the purchase price, and then they will typically do 100% of the repairs. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
So do you remember what the percentage rate was by any chance?
I think if I remember correctly, I had to bring down 15% as a down payment, and then they funded everything else. But I still, as far as the repairs go, I still had to, I had to start the rehab process with my own funds. And then after the first wave of the rehab, when I did my first couple of draws, they refunded that back to me.
Gotcha.
So I think that's just to show that, you have the funds and you kind of are moving along before they give you anything else.
Gotcha. And that 15% that you mean, are you sure?
15% down as in of the full I think that as the full money that was being loaned to me.
Okay. Gotcha. So you got it done, you said in a month. So when you got ready to list it, what was the actual list price?
We listed it for 129.9. Just because we had a really smart realtor who knew the area really well and told us like, listen, we can get people in a bid war on this. And we finished the property with really good finishes. So we originally thought we were going to get 120, but what ended up happening was when we got our appraisal done, the property came back with 200 more square footage than what we had thought because the previous owners had added an additional 200 square feet to it.
Oh,
So obviously
wow.
Yeah, so obviously it raised the ARV a little bit. But we listed it at 129.9, ended up selling at 136.
That's awesome. So were there any crazy surprises or anything while going through this project? This is your first project.
Oh man, come on. Is that even a question? You know there's gotta be surprises. That's part of real estate.
Yes.
So this is not to intimidate anybody from taking their first steps, but you guys got to be prepared because little things are going to happen. And the most important thing is just mentally being prepared, knowing that you can overcome these challenges. So my property got broken into 3 times.
Oh boy.
And yeah, and then about towards the end of the project, we found out there was a family of groundhogs living under our garage. So we had to deal with that also. But as far as anything else, that was the craziest. Which, I mean, I don't know how crazy people may think that is. I thought that was crazy enough, but I've heard a lot worse now. So I didn't think, now looking back, I didn't deal with too much. Like, it wasn't that bad.
So every day was Groundhog's Day for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, every day was Groundhog Day. And it was funny because we had a feeling something was going on because it was specifically in the garage. Whenever you'd walk in the garage, you can smell this different smell. Like, it smelled like death in the garage. Like something was dead. But you didn't know from where it was coming from. And then I think it was like week 2 into the rehab, about halfway through, contractor kind of spoke up and was like, hey, I've been hearing scratches in the wall of the garage. And, you know, we're not sure what it is. And it wasn't until later on we actually spotted a groundhog in the backyard. And then we went in some little hole. And next thing you know, we found 2 big holes in the backyard going under the garage. And yeah, that's when we knew.
So I'm afraid to ask, how did you get rid of the groundhogs?
Ah, man, we had to call pest control.
Okay.
I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but our contractors once we saw them leave, they tried to put a bunch of big rocks in the hole to basically not let them go back in. Groundhogs are apparently pretty strong because they just moved those rocks out the way and then went right back in again. So we tried what we could, and obviously we didn't want to harm the animals, so we ended up having to call pest control, and they put some traps out there and got rid of all of them, and then moved them out into the wilderness.
Very nice. And thank you for saving a couple lives there.
Yeah, we love animals here.
Very good. So you said it was broken into 3 times. What was taken?
Oh my God, this is ridiculous. So the very first time it was broken into, it was crazy because it was broken into before we had even done anything. We had literally just closed on the property, and I think literally about 2 days later it got broken into. So the property was already empty. I mean, there was nothing to take. They broke into it. And the only thing they broke was the garage door, which we were gonna have to replace anyways. So they broke the garage door, got in, found nothing, and then they left, and they left a gun on the front lawn. So, and I remember speaking with you about this. I was telling you, I'm not sure if the break-in was really a break-in or it was a way for them to try to get rid of like a weapon or what it was, but that was it. It was weird. Just closing my first property, 2 days later, it got broken into. So obviously already, I'm like, okay, I gotta do something about this.
Wow.
The second time was actually during our rehab, and silly me, thinking that it wouldn't happen again, because even though it did and they didn't take anything, I didn't think it was going to happen again. It did. And they once again broke into the garage, and they took, I think it was about maybe $2,000 worth of contractor tools and stuff. So, that was horrible. But this is why I said we had a great GC at the moment. He didn't let that stop them at all. The next day, they were right back to work and kept it going. And I just made sure I did my part, and I got a tattletale alarm system, had that installed the very next day. And that basically protected us the rest of the time, because the third time they broke in through a back window. And what's funny about this time, we had just staged the property. It was after we were getting ready to close, getting ready to stage it and put it on the market. We had just staged the property, which obviously showed me that whoever broke in was watching, because that night after we staged it, they broke in through the back window. Well, actually, it wasn't even that night. It was early in the morning, because when I got a call from Tattletale Alarm and then the police and all that, it was like 5 a.m. But they broke in through a back window. The alarm went off, thank God, and they basically only took 2 lamps and then ran out the front door.
Wow.
So.
Well, this is the importance of having insurance, because I'm sure your GC had insurance and ask me why I know this, because I had a house broken into, and he used, because it has happened to him in the past where people have broken in and tried to steal tools and things. He had these huge orange trunks, like metal trunks that were locked, like clasped to the some framing inside the house. I can't think of the words right now.
Mhm.
So it's literally like attached by locks to the framing, and these people went in and still broke them and took the entire trunks. So yeah, I hear you, but he has insurance, and that's the importance of having those things, because then they're easily replaced. So
Yeah.
that is definitely a lesson to learn. So
Make sure your GC has insurance.
yep, exactly. So all right. So you get it listed and then you ended up selling it. Did you have any issues from the time of when it was under contract? Like, this is the part that makes me so nervous, is they have their inspector come in and they
Yeah.
find like nitpicky shit, and it drives me crazy. I make Vance handle this because it just drives me nuts. But any issues from being under contract to the actual sale?
So I mean, I wouldn't really say issues, but I can agree with you that it did have me nervous because they bring an inspector, and obviously that inspector's job is to try to find as many things wrong as he possibly can.
Yep.
So this honestly is more of a test on your GC than it is anything else, you know, because if they come back and say, oh, this is now all this stuff is wrong, you got to get with your GC and make sure that they fix all that. But it was funny. So the very first offer we got was $140,000 all cash offer.
Wow.
And apparently it was a father that wanted to buy the property for his daughter. And then, you know, upon going to the property, not that the property was bad, but he didn't like the area as much as he thought. Because if anybody knows anything about the Linden area in Columbus, it's not the best area, but it's an area that's being, you know, starting to be renovated and revamped up now. So it's starting to become a beautiful area. He didn't want to do the deal because of just the area.
But did he know that it came with firearms growing in the front yard?
We didn't want to mention anything about that, I'm pretty sure. But no, I mean, I kind of wish that would have fell through, because man, a all cash offer on your first property, that would have been crazy. But yeah, they ended up backing out because of that. But you know, things happen. But with this, the person we ended up closing with, their inspector came in, and if I can remember, the only issues they really had was small little things like, oh, you know, this hinge on this door it's not proper, or we had a sink that was not even, I wouldn't really say leaking like that, but it had little drops that were coming from the pipe, so we had to get that fixed. But the major thing was the roof above the garage. Since part of that was an addition, it didn't have shingles per se. They had like a flat, not even sure what to call it. It was like a mat or whatever that had like a runoff. But through our time when we got an inspection done, our inspector told us that it didn't damage the integrity of the structure of the property. So it was nothing harmful. And we didn't want to have to go and have to repair all that, because that would have been a good, you know, extra couple $1,000s to get that roof taken care of and all that. So we just basically made sure to come back and say, hey, listen, we bought the property like this. The integrity of the property and the structure is still good. There's not going to have any effects. The roof works perfectly. We just didn't want to touch that up. But if you want to, you know, we can do that, but we're going to have to renegotiate costs. And they actually ended up just accepting it as it is, since they knew the structure was fine and really nothing major after that. And that was, you know, luck, because I've heard, you know, people have had to deal with more, people have had to deal with less, but it just worked out for me. So nothing too crazy, but that is something I get nervous about sometimes, because even though you're done, it all depends on that inspection from the buyer side.
Yep. Well, that's awesome that worked out. So let's go over some final numbers here. So your estimated repairs, one more time, what were they?
Estimated repairs was $30,000.
And what was your actual repairs?
Actual spent was about $35,600. So we went about $5,000 over. And like I said, it's just with the little things that you end up finding out, and you know, the groundhogs and just little things like that, you end up having to pay a little more. And then, you know, property being broken into 3 times, like all those things add up. But at the end of the day, you know, when you can make out with a good profit and you plan for a contingency, all those things work out. So
perfect. And what about holding costs?
I think we only had to pay two lender payments.
Okay.
So the holding cost total was about $1,500, which isn't too bad.
But then like electric, and you have
yeah, your electric. So yeah, our utilities is really low. Like our electric bill is only $42. Gas bill was like $74. So those didn't add up too much, but we probably spent about $200 on utilities overall.
Okay, that's not bad. And what about commissions for the sale of the property? Do you remember what the commissions were?
I think the realtor commission was 7%. But I wanted to touch back on this because I bought the property for 45, but we ran into some lien issues with
Oh,
the buyer, having to buy the property. So I actually had to bring a third party in to help me. And I'm gonna shout him out. His name's Fred Brown. Really, really good guy from Columbus. Really good wholesaler. Big rental guy. But he actually, I don't know what type of pull Fred has, but he knows how to talk very well, and he's a guy that's really outgoing and stuff. So we had a lien issue, and he basically stepped in and helped and called and made all these calls. Next thing you know, he comes back and says, "Hey, got the lien removed, taken care of. You're good to close." So we had to break him off a little money, and then obviously we compensated Austin on the wholesale side. So even though I bought for 45, all in compensation was about 5,000 on top. So I pretty much purchased the property for about 50 grand.
okay. And what were the closing costs? Do you use attorneys or title companies? What do you use up there?
Title companies. We were using title company. I think it was PM Title for this property.
So do you remember what the closing costs were?
I don't think I remember the closing costs. Or actually, I do. I have it right here. Paid at close about. Well, no, this was closing when we first bought the property. Yeah, I don't think I remember the closing costs. We actually closed on our end, selling.
Okay. So what was your total profit? Let's hear it.
Total profit was about $36,000.
That is amazing.
Oh
And
man.
did you said you had a partner with this one?
Yes, I had a partner by the name of Michael Yausis. He was a guy that I've known since high school, and this is kind of goes into how I started with real estate. But he got involved in real estate his senior year of college while in a nursing program. Big shout out to him. I don't know how you do that because I was an engineer and I couldn't. But he had asked me to, get involved with his first property. And I told him, like, listen, I got too much going on right now with school and my sports and all that. So I was like, I'll think about it after school. But he kept going. He graduated from Ohio Dominican University with a nursing degree. And to this day, he has never used that nursing degree. He is full-time real estate.
Wow.
And and that's all he does now.
So did you have to split that 36 with him, or that was your?
Yeah, I split with him. And that had to do with just the people he brought to the table, the experience he was giving me, and then kind of mentoring me through the process, which honestly, that's kind of something I would recommend for people that are very timid or just fearful of getting their first property. Find somebody that's willing to mentor you, find somebody that has been through the process before. It'll make life a lot easier for you, and it'll give you a boost of confidence going in and trying to do it yourself afterwards.
And that's so important to have a good network of people around you because, you need those Freds, you need the Austin Rutherfords, and you need those people in your life to push you along and to help steer you in the right direction.
Right.
And the fact that you've been in this, just over a year or almost a year, correct? I'm sorry.
Yes, almost a year.
And you're doing things like going on these masterminds with other real estate investors. So you're totally doing the right thing by surrounding yourself with awesomeness, me included. I mean, let's be honest here.
No, you're awesome, Jen. I'm not. We're not gonna dumb that down at all. You're amazing. That's why I sat with you and Vance at that table.
I'll pay you later for that. So after completing your very first project with a very nice profit, what were your big takeaways from this?
I think honestly, my biggest takeaway, first of all, I learned how not scary real estate really is. I think
Say that again.
Most scary thing,
Say that again, because the listeners, they are so nervous.
Real estate is not scary. It is not scary. Let me tell you guys that, and I'll say it again. Real estate is not scary. Real estate is not scary.
Excellent.
I understand the first property fear because I was there. But like I said, I would just recommend finding somebody that has been there, done that, because they can remove or shake that away from you. But once you take that step and you go through it and you kind of learn as you go, you pretty much, after the first deal, you kind of know what you have to go through, at least to get a property, get through the rehab, and sell. And the small little nitty details that change with property to property, those are the ones that you end up mastering the more experience you get. But I think it's important to just get that first property experience because it'll negate all the fear, and then you'll be able to go after that and do whatever you need to do.
That's wonderful. Thank you for putting it in that perspective. So now you've done 2 more projects since then. So did they go just as smooth as this first one?
Oh man, you would think so, right? You would think.
I already know what the
Um,
answer is.
oh my God, yeah. So my second flip, I'll just put it this way. This was supposed to be, and mind you, the numbers for this flip it was a home run. We just to summarize it up, it was a property that ARV was supposed to be originally was 200,000, and we were buying the property for 135,
Nice.
and it was supposed to only take at most 20,000. This would be a quick month in cosmetic flip, in and out, sell, no brainer. We are currently almost 6 months in now. Yeah, and and I don't want to say it was really, obviously COVID tended to do some little play a part in that, but it obviously wasn't all COVID. COVID doesn't extend your rehab from 1 to 6 months. But basically what happened was with this property, I ended up partnering with some contractors that I knew because easier to save money that way. Contractors know where to find materials for a lot cheaper.
Right.
And then if they can do the work themselves, you're not having to pay the labor. So I thought that was a fantastic idea. And the problem with that, and this is gonna go directly to the investors, is if you're gonna do that, if you're ever gonna partner with a GC, make sure you're partnering with a GC that has an investor mindset. They still had a contractor mindset, and obviously as a contractor, you know that you get paid for your time.
Right.
The longer you work, the more you get paid. And I'm not necessarily saying that they wanted to work longer, but they're used to working longer. They're not used to being on a time clock, on deadlines and stuff like that. So since they were the ones that were doing primarily all the work, we we're only going to outsource stuff since it was such little work that really needed to be done. I figured, I got my first property done in a month, which was, faster than or more work than this second flip. But it just didn't work out like that because they were trying to still run their own business as we were doing this, instead of just putting their business on pause a little bit, helping, getting this property done and understanding that they'd make more money flipping this house than they would have, doing their normal Monday to Friday or whatever,
right.
9 to 5 weekly contracting. So that's really been the worst of it. We haven't ran into big dilemmas or anything like that. The property still, as of right now, is a gold mine.
And you had some good news once you returned.
Yeah, so I got some, and I think I took the good vibes from the Dominican Republic because I came back and we're starting to finish up in the property now. I came back with a sense of urgency, like, all right, we got to get things moving. So I basically told them, like, listen, if you guys are going to get this done, we're going to start outsourcing the work. Like, I'm going to call somebody, we're going to get this done because the longer we sit on this property, the more money we're spending. So I ended up doing the math. I think we were paying the lender about $40 a day.
Wow.
And I'm just like, every day that something doesn't get done, it's $40. And I mean, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, it's not a big deal, or maybe it's not. But that's $210 a week. Like that it adds up.
Yep.
So I told them, like, yo, we got to get this stuff done ASAP. They kind of jumped on board. We outsourced the work, got things completed. I think today after this podcast, we're actually going to go and do the final walkthrough. And, I've already scheduled the cleaning crew and all that. But upon all that, when I went to Access Title Company to close in the rental 2 days after getting back from the Dominican Republic, the president of Access Title, so me and him have gotten, really cool because of, my times going there. And his wife is a realtor. So they had asked me, like, hey, what do you plan on listing Big Run at? That's where we close on that property, which I didn't mention, but that's the name of the street. So everybody knows this, but you name the property is by the street. This one's Big Run. But he's like, what are you going to end up trying to list Big Run at? And I said, we're going to go about 200, 210. And they gave me this look and I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? And they're like, listing it that low? And I was like, that low? Like that was our, that's our ARV. That's what we did our research on. That's what sounds right. And I guess they said, no, with the current market right now and the low inventory in the area and, it being a seller's market right now, like you guys have to list high. Because most people listing in the specific area where Big Run is at, everybody's they're getting overbids. Like people are going in bidding wars, and whatever you list at, you're selling for more than that.
Wow.
So their advice to us was to list 5% higher than the last most comparable comp.
Wow.
So I ended up after that. I mean, it sparked right away in my mind. Like, okay, we got to get some numbers down to figure out what we got to list for. So his wife ran some numbers for me, and then the realtor that we already know is gonna sell our property for us. She ran some numbers and I ended up getting that. The minimum we can sell for now is about 240.
Wow.
And that's minimum. Like we're not even including what people are probably going to be fighting for and overbidding and all that. So originally we thought 200, 210. We're at 240 now minimum. So very happy about that. And that obviously it kind of helped us out with the extra 5 months it took and the holding costs having to pay and all that. But just grateful, and obviously going to take the lessons learned and move forward with that.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that, and that $40 a day, you're definitely making up for it now. So that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rona, for that.
Yeah. Thank you, Rona.
So the second half of the podcast, I like to find out what makes you a badass, and I use the acronym BADASS. So
love it.
Yes, and clearly you are a badass. So
I'm a badass, man.
Yes,
you are too.
You are. So the B is book. What is a book that's made a huge difference in your life?
This is weird. So most people probably wouldn't answer with something like this. But for me, if you guys ever heard of it, it's a book called Conversations with God. Author is Neil Donald Walsh. Just a quick summary of the book. Neil Donald Walsh was a person that got in a car accident, lost everything he had, pretty much couldn't work anymore, went homeless, and then finally started to piece his life back together. I got a job, got an apartment, and then the job that he got went out of business, and he ended up going homeless again for the second time.
Wow.
At this point, he's like 50-something years old, and he's like wondering, like, man, I lived my life good. I've done everything right. Why do I have, what have I done to deserve this life of struggle? So he sat down one day and wrote on a notepad and basically just decided to write an angry letter to God, because God is the one who controls everything, right? So I'm going to write a letter to God. And basically the way the story goes, he sat down, asked God a question, and out of nowhere, he wrote down the answer. And he didn't know where the answer came from, but he ended up continuing to write and write and write. And what ends up happening is he wrote this book that, instead of it being a book, it's more like a conversation. So he basically takes dictation of a conversation between him and God, and it's up to the reader to basically read it and just interpret and take what you want from it. And upon reading that book, I felt basically a freedom that gave me a sense of peace with myself that I think I've never had before. And I was just able to look at life differently. And ever since then, I just been moving forward, and I'm the half cup full type guy.
And
so,
nothing's stopping you now. Nothing.
No, nothing. It can't. I've already been at the lowest of the low, so nothing else to see.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that book. And that is a new one for us. So thank you. The A in badass, the first A, is advice. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I've ever received. And I mean, this may sound cliche, but the best piece of advice I've ever received is continue to move forward. No matter what your circumstances, continue to move forward. And the way I take that is, I've been through a lot. And I mean, a lot of people have been through a lot. I'm pretty sure you've been through a lot. Our listeners have probably been through a lot. But just always remember, there's somebody out there that's going through a lot more than you are. Somebody out there has been through worse. There's also somebody out there that's been through something that can probably relate to what you're going through, and they probably bounce back from it. So I just say, why not you? Like, what's stopping you from moving forward and being at your best? And I think the answer to that is you. The answer is yourself. So I just say, no matter what's going on, keep moving forward. And as long as you can keep chugging, that's it. Just keep moving forward. Everything is figure outable.
I love it. The D in badass is drive. So as you are moving forward, I want to know what drives you to be successful.
And this is one of the things, like I said, it comes from my roots, being Dominican. I think what drives me is what my family has sacrificed to put me in the position I am. So like I said, I lived in the Dominican Republic for 6-7 months, and I know what it's like to live in a third world country, and understand that's where my family came from and what they had to endure, making the transition to come to America, learn English, and just give me the opportunity that I have. My drive comes from my family and knowing what they've sacrificed. And I just feel like it'd be disrespectful of me to not take advantage of the opportunities I have in front of me. So that's where my drive comes from. I don't think it's a drive that can be removed, or, it's a flame that could be blown out by anything.
And as a 24-year-old, everything that you're doing, it's clear that you have this massive drive and you respect where your family came from. So that's wonderful. The second A in badass is aspiration. What is a goal you are currently working on?
Goal it's a continued goal, but I'll do a small goal. So one of my very small goals is I want to be able to look back every year and know that I've moved forward or leveled up in some way. I think a lot of people get in this, they get in this comfortable space where they got their shit together, but they're just comfortable and they just tend to sit there. And as the days go by, you look back and you look and you're like, man, I didn't do anything this past year. And I think if you're saying that, you should probably look and think, like, what things can you change or what can you do to keep moving forward? Like I said, so one of my small goals is every year I like to look back and see what I did and reflect on my year. And as long as I've leveled up and I've, elevated my life in some way, then I'm happy with that. Long-term goal is eventually to have real estate overtake my full-time engineering occupation and give me the financial freedom I want so that I can travel and spend more time with my family.
Fantastic. The first S in badass is systems. And you have so many things going on, so I'm sure you have some systems in place to keep everything moving forward. So what are your best systems?
This is kind of weird because systems is still something I'm developing, right? So since right now I'm only 3 projects in, most of it has just been me. I don't have any other employees. It's all me, myself, and I. But I'm working on building a elite team of 4 people, elite crews. Those 4 people being a really good realtor, a really good contractor, eventually a good assistant, somebody that I can trust to go and operate and get things done for me, and then a good acquisitions person or a good wholesaler. But systems in place right now, I have a really good system in my GC of, knowing how pay schedule. So having things aligned to where they know scope of work, what they need to have done, everything, so where they have no questions. Everything's on a piece of paper, every room, pictures, anything, enough to where even if you weren't a GC, I can hand you a scope of work and you can manage the GC for me because you know what all needs to be done. And then payment schedule, we have everything aligned to where every week, get this done. I come in and check it. This is done. You get paid now. This is done, and everybody is aligned that way. And for me right now, that has worked good, especially with this rental property. Things in my rental have been as smooth as ever. I've only been in there 3 times. And in the past week and a half, we've got demo completely out, done. They've drywalled everything and already started painting. And I've only had to be there 2-3 times, and it was just to check because of the systems we have in place. So I would tell anybody that doesn't have the opportunity or doesn't have the crew yet, if you just are on your own, get the GC stuff or the contractor management stuff down first, because it'll make your life easier with the rehab process. That way, while rehab's going on, you can focus more on leads and getting your next property, which is what my focus is on right now. So I think after this, I'm going to start focusing on marketing and trying to get more leads in now that I'm starting to get comfortable with managing rehabbers or managing a rehab.
Very well said. And I think putting the right people on your team is such an important system to have in place. So perfect. Yes. All right. The last S in badass is success. What does success mean to you, 24-year-old? Let's hear it.
Yeah, this is crazy because success really, like you said, what does it mean to me? It can mean something to somebody else completely different. I think success for me is when, and I haven't got there yet. I mean, obviously people tell me I'm successful and I've been doing things for my age. But for me, it's going to be when I can finally sit down and my money is working itself, and I can sit down with my family and see the smile on their faces, and everybody is just relaxed. Like, money's working on its own, but now I'm at a point where I'm not stressed no more. Retirement for me seems like it's early. That to me would be success, just because I have the freedom I want and I've worked hard enough to see my work pay off. Because I don't know why some people think that success can come without hard work. And we all know it's not going to happen. That hard work is a part of that recipe. You got to be willing to work hard. You're going to have to sacrifice. When I came back from the mastermind, I was putting in 17-hour days, and I worked 9-10 hours on my engineering job. And after that, full-time real estate happens right after. I put my real estate pants on, go to look at properties and things of that nature. But if it takes, 16, 17-hour days to get to where I'm 30 and now I'm traveling and just relaxing, hey, so be it. I'm young. I'll put in the work, and that's what it's going to take to get to success. That's what it's going to take. We're going to do what we got to do.
Well, I think you're going to reach it sooner than you think, because I'm so very impressed with you. I'm so glad that you chose to sit next to the old folks at this first meeting we had. So I got to know you.
You guys got the experience.
So I can't wait to see where you go with everything. And I'm so proud of you, Erick. So thank you for recording this. How can my listeners find you? Are you on social media? Well, are you? Yes, I'm sure you are. So how do they find you on social media?
Easiest way to find me, go to Instagram, type in Prestigiouspropertys, PrestigiousPropertys. Prestigious Properties is a business page. I've been using it a lot more, especially after the mastermind. We learned a lot about social media. I used to be the type of guy that kind of just didn't put anything because I didn't want people to know about my movements till afterwards. But now I've been a lot more active and wanting people to, see what I'm doing and just learn. And I think it builds relationships really well. So if you guys want to build a relationship with me and just ask me any questions, I'm all here for it. Find me on social media, Prestigious Properties, or just look up Erick Martinez.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so very much for being on the show. And that is all. Thanks for listening. We will catch you on the next episode. Now go out there and share your badassery. And don't forget, make it a great day. Take care. Bye-bye. Whoop, whoop.
Thank you for listening to RAIN, the Real Estate Investor Growth Network. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. If you need more badassery, you can follow Jen Josie by visiting therealjenjosie.com or become a member of RAIN by registering on rainmastermind.com.